Introducing AirMeet, an all-in-one virtual and hybrid events platform designed for high engagement with an attendee-first approach. Now double your leads and revenue by customizing your event with interactive features, branding, analytics, and audience insights, while enjoying up to 98% attendee retention.
Welcome back to the Customer Success Festival. Before we get going with the next helping of inspiring content, we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for helping us bring this event to your screens. And don't forget, you can access even more content to elevate your CS knowledge by becoming a CSC member. Simply head on over to our website to find out more. Now sit back and enjoy the next session.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Shai Gudarzi. I go by Shai. I'm a senior manager in our customer success department within UiPath. I'm super excited to talk about this topic today. I've talked about it before. This is kind of the second or third time I'm speaking on this, but I'm really passionate about it. And I think it's something that's obviously going to increase over the next few years. And it's been discussed over the past couple of years, but I think it's something that's going to continue to trend forward, and something that I think all CS teams, all CSMs, anyone surrounding CS from an industry standpoint is going to want to understand the relationship between AI and CS and how AI can really drive our CS departments forward. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I had to prioritize a little bit of PTO, a little bit of time for myself as well. But I hope this presentation is not really, is informative, but also we have some takeaways towards the end of them as well. So let's jump right in, and we'll see how we can take this forward. So I always like to start with a joke, just because I'm not a great speaker. So we're going to start with something small, and I wish I could be there to kind of take a couple of answers to see if anyone could get it. But why did your customer get lost? Because they took the wrong churn. I promise no more jokes after this, but I had to get this one in. I got plenty of dad jokes, so if you need dad jokes, just let me know. But I wanted to start on something light and kind of take a little bit of a CS inspiration from it. But let's jump into really the bulk of what we want to talk about today. And really, this slide, all I want to say here, and really what I want to say about my experience of the past is, I've been in digital transformation and really client service my entire career. I've worked with some amazing clients at Deloitte. I've had my own startup where we've had, I think 20 to 30 clients over a few years within the no code and low code space. I've also been very fortunate to work in, some spaces as well within healthcare, and even now at UiPath, where we are serving multiple clients at the same time, or we act as a COE. So I've kind of done it all, from product to customer service to delivery to consulting. But the interesting part about my experience in this topic today is the most relevant experience that I had to kind of make a connection within this topic is actually my time as a coach. So I actually was a junior varsity and varsity head coach for basketball for about 5 years before I started my career. And there's a very interesting similarities within this topic that I'd like to discuss. Now, if you think about your typical basketball team, you have your starting lineup, which comprises of your point guard, your shooting guard, starting forward, power forward, and center. And you have your substitutes. Now, your starting lineup, for the most part, is going to represent 70 to 85% of all your wins. And your subs can actually maybe add on another 15 to 30%. Now, why is that? Now, the reason is your starting lineup is going to play most of the game, which means they control the majority of the outcome. Each starting role is an invaluable piece to the overall impact of your team. If you know anything about basketball, really anything about sports, every lineup or every position is going to be really, really important in team sports. I wouldn't be the best basketball team if I had 5 centers or 5 point guards or 5 shooting guards, because each position does something a little bit different. And to be honest, without your best players, you're going to lose most games. And it's not a knock to any of the substitutes. And it's a hard conversation sometimes when you have, parents, why isn't my son playing? Why isn't this? And I'm not going to get into that, but your best players are going to win you most of your games. Now, the good thing about that conversation sometimes of, hey, why isn't my son playing? Or what is going on. The difference between a regular team and a championship team is going to be those subs impact. And the reason that is that great subs, they prevent burnout. If you think about your starting lineup, they're going to need some minutes. One of the biggest things that I learned in 4 or 5 years of coaching is I can't just run my starting five and expect to win championships. I just can't. I need to make sure, how do I utilize the best dynamic within our team, or utilize the most out of the team that I have. And one thing that subs do, one thing that great subs do, is prevent that burnout. The second thing is they optimize output. When I can figure out how to use my starting lineup and my subs in a way to create more dynamic lineups, to create more dynamic, lineups to put on the floor, I can now become a different team, and we can have different types of ways to attack different teams and different ways to get different wins. The other thing is, it kind of makes your starters look better. When you have great subs that can come in, interject energy, interject a positive output, your starting lineup and your foundation actually performs a lot better, and it looks a lot better because now you're optimizing as you continue to play the game. And then lastly, opens up new opportunities. When you have great subs, you're now taking your team to greater heights, more championships, more wins, playoffs, whatever the case may be. You're opening up those new opportunities because you've now figured out a way to do a lot more with less. Now, if I think about our customer success team, right? What does a customer success team look like? Now, our starting lineup, obviously, number one is going to be CSMs. And I've said this before, I'll keep saying it. We're the stars. We're the LeBron Jameses, we're the Kobe Bryants, we're the Steph Currys of the starting lineup. And we're going to continue to be, because there's some great work that we do. Now, the rest of that, your customer touch points, your internal operations, your metrics, and then obviously your CS tech platform. In my mind, these 4 or 5 are basically the foundation of any customer success team. What are the subs? Now, some of them can be playbooks. Some is your customer experience, right? Whether you have self-service, we have automation, your reporting and dashboards, your overall CS strategy. You can interject some of these subs to increase your starting lineup, to increase the output, to increase some of the things that your customer success team as a department serves to the organization. Now, any number one of these subs are fantastic, right? Because the difference between a regular CS team and a championship CS team is, again, those same subs impact. If you have great playbooks, if you have a great strategy, if you're thinking about self-service and automation, and how do we delineate between a positive digital experience within every touch point that we have within our customers, that's how you're going to get to that championship CS team. And again, those great subs prevent burnout, they optimize output, they make your starters look better, and they're going to open up new opportunities for your entire customer success department if you utilize them in the right way. Now, getting to this topic, how does AI become your greatest sub ever? How does it become that sub that when it's interjected into the starting lineup, it takes you to new heights? It prevents burnout for your CSMs. It enables you to do a lot more for your organization, and you become more of a positive outcome or positive reinforcement to your organization or to the goals and your business outcomes that your business has. Now, before I jump into AI and some of the use cases and stuff like that, let's first ask ourselves, what does a championship kind of look like for customer success? If I think about at the end of the year, we're holding up this trophy that says our customer success team, we won that championship. I think about 6 things. I think about customer loyalty. I think about customer satisfaction. I think about those two really being, I would say table stakes, in the sense of our customers are loyal in the sense that they have us in their roadmap moving forward. Whatever product, whatever service that we have, we're on their roadmap strategically to continue to be a benefactor to whatever problem we're solving for them. Customer satisfaction. Obviously, we want to make sure that our product, our service is something that they're not only thinking about, hey, that they're satisfied, but they're thinking about, wow, this is, again, it's solving the problem that we need it to, but also it's taking us a lot further with the value that it's provided. Team momentum to me is very, very important. At the end of the year, is the team burnt out, or is the team riding the momentum from the previous year? They're learning, we're introducing retrospectives, we're taking the things that we've learned from that past year, and we're growing with that momentum. And then obviously those bottom 3, we want to make sure that we're hitting on, right? We're increasing adoption, we're decreasing in churn, and we're expanding the revenue opportunities, and we're helping our sales team really continue to not only expand on some of the renewals, but if you're in a SaaS business, for example, that incremental ARR is very, very important. If you're in service or you're in another industry, how are we helping our sales teams, and how are we increasing the customers that are our top customers, our key accounts, our key programs, and expanding them even further with some of the other products or services that we might offer? So that's my championship criteria. Now, if I think about the championship criteria and some of those outcomes that we talked about, prevent burnout, optimize output, and I'll go back there. The reason I'm going to change make your starting lineup look better into CS as a profit center, we'll get to that a little bit later in the use case in the use cases, but essentially, if our starting lineup looks better, CS is now a profit center. It's not a cost center to the company. We'll talk through that a little bit more and open up new opportunities. So if I think about these outcomes right here, and I think about our championship criteria, if you prevent burnout, your team momentum is going to increase. If you optimize output, your team momentum will increase, customer loyalty, customer satisfaction will continue to be at all-time highs. If you are acting as a profit center, all those bottom three, the increased adoption, decrease in churn, revenue expansion, you're enabling all of these things. Then obviously on the open up new opportunities, if we have those great subs, if AI continues to be that pushing factor for us, along with our playbooks, our strategy, all those things we interchange, we will open up new doors to expanding our revenue, to increasing team momentum, right? Now, if we have AI enabled and we're using automation, AI, whatever the case may be, to not only take things off of our CSM's plates, but now think about different ways to be creative. Oh my God, think about some of the opportunities that we can have as teams to not only better the company, but work with product, work with sales, work with pre-sales, work with whoever we need to continue to expand on some of the ideas that we have. Now, one thing I'd like to note is that if you think about where most CS teams operate, and UiPath included, we're not excluded from this. I believe most folks will operate within these range. And the reason I optimize output is a little bit further is because I do think a lot of CS teams get a lot out of our CSMs, a lot of our CS teams. And I do think CSMs do such amazing work. And we do optimize a number of things that we do. However, preventing burnout and opening up new opportunities isn't as high, and it needs that attention because we're constantly working at the things that are right in front of us. Where I think AI will push us is to be exceeding our best in class when we think about not only our individual output as CSMs, but CS as a department, because we'll start to think about the way that we work in, again, doing less with more, right? Or doing more with less, sorry. And think about how can we expand on what we're working on to focus on the high priority, but start to delineate between maybe high task and low task, or high value and low value. And I think that's really where AI will push us. Now, I have a few use cases, and I want to start with prevent burnout. And I've put them across optimize output, CS as a profit center, open up new opportunities. But the first one that I think is really interesting is AI generated health scores. I think one of the biggest problems is CSMs tend to have a large number of accounts, and each time we're trying to assess the health score of some of our clients, it's almost 90% of the time we're going around and we're trying to do all this manual data retrieval to accurately assess health, whereas we should be spending more time analyzing the data rather than gathering the data. If we can leverage AI generated health scores, we can easily tap into a large amount of data sets a lot quicker. We can integrate with fragmented systems, and we can pull that information or pull the most relevant information to determine what that health score is. And then what's most important, we can start to prioritize and curate some of those results to auto-generate recommended actions by customer, right? So you're thinking about, you look at a customer, right? For example, that their health score maybe has changed from Q2 to Q3. Well, why is that? And what are the 3 or 4 things that I can do to make sure that I can get them in the right direction? I'm not thinking about data. I'm not thinking about going to the customer. I'm thinking about what are the next actions? How can I take this information and help them consume it? Or how do I deliver this information in a way now that's going to move the needle further? So we're talking about technology, and we're talking about AI, but you think about the end result. The end result is, I know my customer best. how can I now take the information and the recommended actions provided by AI to do something very meaningful? I think it does a number of things, but really outside of the scorecards, creating more accurate long-term assessments because of interactions at scale, CSMs are now spending free time creative problem solving and analyzing risk. We're not gathering risk. We're not just saying, hey, this is where they're at. It's this is where they're at. Now let's have a conversation on how we can problem solve. Now, the next one on optimizing output, a really cool use case in my mind is smart ticketing escalation. If you're a CSM, for example, that has multiple enterprise accounts, let's say you're sitting on the CAP side, which stands for key accounts programs, or you're sitting on enterprise side, you might have 4 to 5 clients with global accounts. And there's a lot of enterprises out there, obviously, as we know, a lot of clients that are nuanced, right? Different business units, different relationships. CSMs can't prioritize every single ticket escalation that we get. And sometimes we spend a lot of time sifting through those tickets and product issues versus, again, value add work, moving the needle, making sure we're working on business outcomes for our clients. We can leverage semantic automation to take that unstructured data and triage those high-risk clients. Now, if you think about semantic automation, all semantic automation means is we're taking unstructured data like email, text, any type of, text, and we're deriving intent from it. So we can understand, where are kind of the high risk and low risk situations that we have. So think about connecting emails, SMS, tickets, and maybe cases and back and forth to interpret and drive those automated triggers. And then what we can do is we can actually analyze those recommendations of what cases are higher and lower, and then we can prioritize effective reach out. So imagine this vision that, you open your laptop on Monday and you have 5 clients with maybe 15 to 20 tickets opened, but there's one specific client that's, hey, these are the most important, tickets that have been escalated. Please work this week to, urgently resolve this for your client. So now I'm not spending time Monday, Tuesday between my 5, 6 clients, which one needs help. It's, hey, this client number 1 really needs my attention. I need to go work with our technical team, our product team, or whatever the case may be to make sure we resolve this. And that's one way that I think we start to learn from a benefit standpoint. We're delineating between high task and low task priorities, right? Everything isn't a priority every week. We're not going to work on everything, all the time. Sometimes you only get 5 to 6 things done in a week, but those 5 or 6 things were really, really big opportunities for us to drive growth and drive a meaningful conversation with our clients. So I think that's really one of the, the benefits of creating something like this, because, even after we've solved some of these problems, we can now reintroduce those back into the product lifecycle, back into the sales lifecycle, even back into onboarding, because some of these bigger problems have a 1 to 2 month or bigger impact across the organization, that now we can take that back and say, hey, I think we can actually minimize the 8 weeks or 9 weeks of impact this kind of problem had if we introduce it on the onboarding time, or if we introduce it in our pre-sales motion. And that's some of the benefit of really turning CS with AI into a profit center. And that's what I want to get to in this next use case. So one of the things that, we think about data for CS, and one of the great metrics that we have here is that CS executives are only able to really, on average, use 1% of the data at their disposal. And one of the things that I think is very important when it comes to AI is that prediction is really, really good, but prescription is healing. If I think about, we can predict, and we look at, again, if you think about preventing burnout, the AI health scores, right? We can predict that this customer is at risk over the next 2 quarters. But then the next step of that is prescribing what actions to take. Now, the use case I'm talking about here is we need to have, or I think in the roadmap moving forward for your organization or for CS as a whole, is having a dedicated platform, not just CRM and analytics, and not just something that lives on top of our CRM, but a CS dedicated platform dedicated to our customers' actions. So product telemetry, metadata, engagement data, any type of data that involves our customers and very, very important touch points across the buying lifecycle, the retention lifecycle, we need to understand so that we can analyze those patterns across customers to recommend those next best actions. And that's kind of the next, that's kind of the overarching theme across AI is what are those next best actions that we can derive from AI, from machine learning, from these models that we've created? And how can we use all of this data at our disposal to really prescribe and work on being creative with the prescription and how we deliver that information and not necessarily the gathering of it? Now, I think obviously some of the biggest benefits is, CS is now trained on recognizing compelling events. So we can now bring data to the sales conversation. It's not just about, utilizing the product and making sure the utilization might be up or utilizing service, but now we are analyzing, what are these big compelling events that we can now start helping sales with. CS can now yield some of this data, as a sword, quote unquote, in the sales fight. We're showcasing hard dollar recognition to some of the work that we're doing. And I think that's, the last benefit obviously around customer retention, and we have multiple chances for upsell and cross sell, but really yielding this data as a way to rethink how we structure some of our workflows and our strategy within CS. I think that's really the mark. And I really think that's where AI is really going to impact CS a lot. And, the opening up new opportunities, if we think about some of the use cases and we kind of all tee it all together, sales is really focused on adding more customers, right? It's, customer acquisition cost. It's thinking about how do we add more logos to our sales function or to our department as a whole to continue growing, the amount of customers we have and obviously to keep the lights on, as a company. CS is more about retaining more customers. And the reason why I say NPS, between customer satisfaction and NPS, why I'm more of an NPS person, is a net promoter score is really about who is willing to be a champion of your product or service. If NPS is very, very high, that means that word of mouth, that means that that person in the organization, your clients, are really thinking about you as a strategic problem solver, not just a product, not just a tool. And that's why I really love NPS. But really what this is going to do, it's going to bridge the gap between sales and CS. And you're going to have this quote unquote AI enabled growth. And in my mind, the biggest metric that we're going to increase is customer lifetime value, because now we're taking CS and now we're using it as a sales function or a sales tool to create net new markets, net new customers, net new opportunities, because we've now reintroduced it as a sales asset into the sales process. So we're not only bridging the gap between sales and CS, we're not only bridging teams, we're now bridging strategies on how CS can continue to be a profit center to the organization and assist sales in growing, and not necessarily thinking about sales and CS as independent organizations. They are independent departments. They always will be, but at the same time, there's always that cross collaboration between sales and CS constantly. And there needs to be strategically, especially for bigger accounts as you get into $2, $3, $4 million accounts and taking them to 10, 15. This is where really I think those new opportunities are going to become not only more apparent, but strategically a lot more smoother in the roadmap of how do we get there. So I think those use cases are fun. Use cases are really fun to talk about. I think there's so many more out there. I think there's so many smart people that have, obviously more ideas than I do when it comes to some of these use cases. But, excuse me, one of the things I wanted to end with is kind of where do we start? This is all great, but where do I start today? The first thing I think I would recommend is, what is manual today? If you're sitting at a coffee shop on a Friday and hopefully you have maybe an hour to enjoy your coffee Friday morning or Friday afternoon, whatever the case may be, and you're doing some brainstorming, what are the things that you do every single week, it seems like, that are manual, right? And before even getting to step two, just writing those down and understanding, oh my gosh, this is what spends most of my time, is really, really important. Because the next step is, if you want to think about AI specifically before even getting into what workflows can we automate, there's actually a lot of artificial intelligence that already exists with a lot of tools. You think about any tool you're using today, or any SaaS tool, product, whatever the case may be, they are adding AI as a capability. If they haven't, it's on the roadmap. So figuring out what AI actually exists within your tools and how do we just trigger, or how do we start to just pull that lever to start leveraging it, is probably a really good place to start. And then you can cross-reference that with what workflows do we now automate. If I'm looking at my manual tasks, I'm looking at what tools that we have today and what is maybe a simple lift of using AI, then I can think about, okay, where does automation and artificial intelligence and what I'm doing manually today, where does that intersect? And I think now it's about how can I measure the success of those workflows and automations to what are the outcomes of what I'm trying to get to, right? You think about the championship criteria, you think about some of the use cases that we have, you're starting to kind of intersect not only measuring the success of it, but measuring how it's going to impact my week to week work. Whether you're a CSM individually or whether you're a VP of customer success or whether you're managing customer success as an entire organization, you have to measure the success of these automations, of the strategy of leveraging AI, because it's not necessarily about technology, right? And the cost of the technology, but it's about the impact. It's what the benefit, what value am I going to derive from measuring the success of some of the things that we're doing. And then from that, you can start to think about how can AI take us further within these workflows? This is your bread and butter, agile, iterate, 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 right? We want to make sure that we can not only prioritize some of the work that we're doing, but we're iterating on what some of the things that we've already built because we can measure the success of it. If we've built out a use case that maybe it's not working too well, okay, what can we prioritize? What can we learn from that? And how can we continue to move forward? Within all of this, the last thing I would say is that, any type of newer technology that comes out, it needs to be a priority, but it needs to be some type of investment as well. You can start small. Hey, we're going to do a small POC. Let's take 3 or 4 of our CSMs. Let's take a client off of their plate, or let's take these things off our plate. Let's dedicate 4 or 5 hours to them each week to solve this one problem, to start leveraging AI within our CS organization. Boom. We've started. There's a month of work there that we can actually start to derive some value. That's one way we can do it. Another way is more top down. Okay, if you're a VP and you're thinking, or you run customer success at any organization, you're thinking, where do I start with this? Well, think about your strategy that you just laid out over the last 6 months or over the last year. If you're thinking about those 2 or 3 pillars, work with the great people that are on your team, or start thinking about how does AI fit within that? What tools do we use? How can we start utilizing those capabilities to ultimately, really help positively impact the CSMs that are on the ground level? And I think that's, some areas that we can start. Thank you so much. That's, if there's one thing that, hopefully you took away from this is that, look, AI is really going to be a differentiator for CS moving forward. I think it's something that hasn't been tapped into today, but I think there's a lot of work that can be done. And I really, really do see this as a really positive benefactor moving forward. And I appreciate everyone taking the time. If you have any questions, although I can't do this live, please, please, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I've also put in my work email there. I always love having these conversations. I'm always curious if anyone is using AI, how it's being used, one, and if it's being successful today. I'm happy to have those conversations. And again, just wanted to say thank you to the entire Customer Success Collective team. They're great, always putting on great events. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. All right, thanks everyone.